Hello and welcome back to Raise Gaming, and today some Wilds discussion. If you haven't noticed yet, in the last day or so, the game has received this insane negative review bomb on Steam. However, the review situation has been trending downwards for the last couple of weeks, largely since the May update. Recent reviews says overwhelmingly negative. An insane 18% of the 9k reviews in the last 30 days have actually been positive. So that's 82% of those reviews negative. What has happened? We're not the only ones to notice. Capcom themselves have put this little pop-up when you're in the main menu of the game requesting feedback and directs you to a page where you can go through a form to provide some direct feelings. It's clear they're aware of the situation and want to get an accurate gauge of why and what, which is a good sign. Let's get to the point though and address the meat of the topic. Wilds doesn't deserve an 82% negative review score as a game. And we're going to talk about that aspect of the content and the game itself shortly. But there is a part of this that does deserve this response and outcry. And in my opinion, some kind of backlash in response to the recent increased performance issues is more than warranted. It's no secret that Wilds has had performance issues since the first beta, where they then made it a bigger priority for the final stage of development. At least that's what they put across. I felt there was a noticeable improvement from the beta to launch version, but since then, there's been gradual changes, minor improvements to the state of things. That's been my experience with a solid rig, but also with my girlfriend and her much worse rig by comparison. There is sentiment though that it's only been getting worse and worse over time, and that hasn't been my experience or people that I know. Still, has the game been optimized and well functional during any of this? Definitely not. I don't know about you, but every time I go to open Wilds, since the game's launch by the way, there's been such a long wait for the game to actually open. It feels like it takes somewhere between 5 and 10 minutes, and every time I've looked into the issue of this, the reasons always come back to de novo. Apparently it's DRM with the purpose of making things harder to mod, cheat, pirate the game, that kind of thing. I don't pretend to know a lot about this, but there's a lot of discussion around the topic of Wilds, despite the fact that Capcom have been using this for years. Despite the fact that there's claims it's caused issues in a couple games, but then been resolved, I think it's easy for someone like me and most people who might vaguely understand the topic, hear that that causes issues, and that's why the game takes ages to open up, for example, or runs worse, and then just take that at face value. I don't know what it is that causes these long load-up times, but I do know that these long load-up times have been the case for me since I played the early version before launch, certainly before any mods were involved. Do I think the long load-up time's the reason the game's getting review bombed? Not specifically, but I do think it contributes. So what's actually happened in the last couple of weeks to cause it? It would more than likely be the shaders issue that appeared with the May patch. Ever since that patch, my game has had noticeable frame drops and stutters, and I can feel that it performs worse at a constant subtle level. I have a rig that has no issues playing any games that I play, except for Wilds at the moment. So that's undeniably a step backwards for performance, even for me. But I would describe it as a sudden leap back rather than this gradual getting worse as people claim. Friends of mine have started to express issues they're irritated by it now, especially since this patch. Reporting issues of low FPS at the start of a hunt, which actually clears up after an initial period. I'm having similar issues myself, and again, we're talking about rigs that are well beyond recommended specs. Now imagine if you're running those recommended specs, or worse, then it's going to be a lot more of a problem. To me, this is what warrants some kind of negative response. One that will get the attention of devs and Capcom at large to make them aware that this is unacceptable, because that's true. The game should not be worse than where it began, it should be running better, not worse. So how do you get their attention and make this clear to them? There's not many options. You either do something like stop playing the game, or you leave a negative review and feedback with clear reasoning as to the problem. For me, that's the recent drop in performance on top of persistent issues of performance before any of that. And so it's an unfortunate side of Steam reviews. You basically have one or two, good or bad. And if you've had a bad experience recently, then your only option is bad. As a binary format, it hits the game overall rather than specifically about performance. And it feels like a tipping point where this sudden drop in performance has pushed a lot of people over the edge. I think that's reasonable. So what's going on in the last few weeks? My base understanding is that shader compilation isn't working as intended. The game is compiling shaders while you're mid-running it, rather than preloading all of them before play. As stated by the official Monster Hunter status page, CPU load is spiking because of that, which is why it's more unstable. Based on my experience and a few of my friends, right, we know that it's a problem at the start of the hunt and then it eases up. I guess that's the shaders compiling at the start, and then they're done and it works normal again. They've told us that you should delete your shader cache files with step-by-step instructions, which is great. There's some kind of solution here and clear instructions for that, but it's also very likely that players will never see that Twitter post or other places it's been shared, or don't want to go through this weird process. I imagine a lot of people are just going to open the game, experience this really bad performance, and not think about it. They'd expect a patch to fix whatever that is, download that, and continue. But that hasn't been the case. The problem is persisting for a lot of people. I put off doing that cache solution because I expected a fast patch myself. So, there must be a reason for that. At this point, I am concerned that Title Update 2 won't do what it needs to, which is largely resolve this current issue and improve performance to a noticeable degree. They've been very quiet about Title Update 2 so far, more than what we're used to. But yeah, that's performance and that situation, my thoughts about it. They deserve backlash for this situation, the performance issues in general for Wilds. This big problem the shader situation has caused. But is that all that's going on here? There has been the topic brought up by the creator Belluar, and also it's been discussed in the community a bit since then. Discussions from shareholders from a meeting Capcom had, posing questions like, where content volume? Why optimization issues? The same group that apparently pushed for a Q4 release rather than delaying the game further, which is just classic stuff, right? But a bigger topic here is that, Wilds is an unfinished game. That's what a lot of people are claiming. And I really disagree with that. We had everything the game needed except for Shia at launch and the hub. Shia, fair enough. We should have had that at launch. It was actually so weird not to be able to fight the final boss again in high rank until Title Update 1. That was strange. On the other hand, yes, we didn't have the hub, but we did have an entirely new feature that filled its purpose in a really cool and new way, the base camps for each locale. So I don't think that one's fair, and Title Update 1 wasn't long in the wait anyway. What about the rest of the game? We had the Artian weapon system from the beginning. We'd normally be waiting until Title Update 1 and then months later until Title Update 2, where you would then get a system like that, such as Kulve to Roth in Base World or Safi Jiva in Iceborne. So we had the tempered system and its progression, the relics, the RNG of the reinforcement, the Artian system as a whole, and we had direct improvements to this compared to all the versions of this system. Like, we didn't have RNG crafting, just reinforcement. You get the full resources back from a reinforcement. We don't have anything like the ridiculous, painful talisman RNG that was in Rise, and it's been reasonable to get the decorations we need in Wilds. In my opinion, this endgame has been clearly measured, considered, based on the past experience. And we've had it all from launch instead of waiting until title updates and beyond. Personally, I've got hundreds of hours in Wilds. It's been a great game. Title Update 1 felt like it came very quick. It landed in like almost half the time that Title Update 1 for World did, by the way. The gap between Title Update 1 and 2 has been longer than usual, there's no denying that. But I think, compare it to Base Rise, right? And how clearly unfinished that game was. We're missing monsters, gameplay aspects. We literally had an unfinished story until 3.0, which was Title Update 2, by the way. We're not experiencing anything like that in Wilds. We're just not. It feels like people expect unlimited content, the kind of feeling you experience with your first Monster Hunter game ever. I think the amount of people who played World for the first Monster Hunter game was certainly huge. And with that, you'll never experience what it is to learn Monster Hunter for the first time ever again. If you did, you'd have a lot more potential here with types of approaches. At this point, you've learned the core of every monster, monster type, type of quest, the formula of title updates themselves. You've learned the core of every weapon you're interested in. If you've done all that, it's completely unreasonable to expect it to happen again now Wilds is released. I don't know, man. It feels like there's this group of people that maybe enjoyed Wilds for a certain period of time, but now, there's not enough for them to sink their teeth into. That is fine. That's where I am at right now. I don't play it every day currently. I'm waiting for Title Update 2. I don't really expect anything more than that. The sentiment that the game is like half finished and half the content in it is insane to me. I can understand that the devs plan this or that right, maybe for the expansions or maybe title updates. But that whole side of things, the complaining around that, reeks of leaks and data mining, which is often misunderstanding information and claiming things as cut content. It was Jono himself, one of our community managers, who tweeted in response to this about pushing false narratives when something is perceived as cut content or intentionally pushed back. Then this idea becomes accepted as fact. Even if it's not true, it happens really quick and is spread as if it was true. And that just sucks. It must be exhausting for the team to see stuff like that, especially commonly as we're in this weird time right now. But all of that is beneath how gross it is when people actually attack people like Jono, or the community managers, or the team in general. It's fine if you didn't like Wilds, but attacking the team for it is unacceptable. So yeah, overall, I believe Wilds definitely doesn't deserve this 18% positive review Steam situation. Some people definitely need a reality check. Like, if you've played this game for hundreds of hours and you've enjoyed yourself, it's okay to not play more while we're between updates. On the other hand, the performance issues are very real, and the recent shader situation really was a big step back. As I said, the only way to make the team really aware of that would be, the recent negative reviews, and to stop playing. With Steam reviews being binary yes or no, good or bad, it affects the game as a whole and makes the game overall look worse. Obviously, I hope that clears up with Title Update 2 and some kind of solid performance improvement. But if it doesn't properly address that, I think people are going to be back to being very upset after they finish whatever new content comes with it. Personally, Wilds itself, fantastic Monster Hunter game for me. Game dev isn't so straightforward as people seem to think. But at the same time, the performance situation is unacceptable, especially the recent shader issue and the lack of patch-related solution. Finally, I should also mention one other important detail, and it's the fact that the PlayStation 5 version of the reviews is still sitting at 85% positive, so basically 4.5 stars. Where, they don't have these performance issues, where this rating makes a lot more sense to me. But yeah, that's what I've got. That's my thoughts on the two sides of it, and I hope this was reasonable to you. We're looking forward to Title Update 2 and obviously hope it's a good one. But for now, I've been Hollow, you've been you. Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.